Have I changed my mind on inflation? That's going to be the topic of today's video. Now, when this crisis began, many people, including people who expected high inflation after 2008 and 2009, said that because of 0% interest rates and QE, inflation was going to go higher, forgetting that they made the wrong prediction last time. However, I do think this time we could see slightly higher inflation expectations, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, before saying this, I don't think we're going to see out of control inflation. I don't even think we're going to see 5% inflation consistently across the board. But we could see inflation going a bit higher than it has done for 10 years or longer. Because, first of all, in 2008 and 2009, the stimulus was much less. But more importantly than that, people were paying off their debts. The fiscal stimulus was very small, so money wasn't getting into people's hands directly. And because of that, the economic recovery took quite a bit of time. So even though the initial crash was much smaller, US GDP, for example, took a few years to get back to where it was. So I think in 2008, the US GDP went down by minus 0.1%. Not much, because Lehman happened near the end of the year. Then I think in 2009, the GDP went down by 2.5%, 2010 up by about 2.6%. So actually, if you look at it, I think the US GDP only recovered in 2011 from 2008, the end of 2008, and the UK was very similar. I think the UK's GDP only recovered in about 2010, 11, something like that. And unemployment took about 7 years to get back to where it was before the crisis. And the main reasons, as I say, I think are because the stimulus was much smaller, but also people were paying down debts. The banks were not lending because of obvious reasons. There was a banking crisis. Whereas this time you had an absolutely thriving economy, at least in the US before the crisis, a hard stop, which meant that unemployment absolutely skyrocketed to like 15%, and GDP fell by a lot. But then when the economy started to open up, we've seen a much quicker recovery. So the US economic forecast is that GDP growth would have got back to where it was before COVID, either last month or this month in April of this year. And this year, the US could grow faster than China, up to 7%, and next year by 4.5%. And unemployment now in the US is where it was in about 2015, a whole 7 years after the global financial crisis. So you've had this massive Biden stimulus when the economy is going to be super hot, unless there's another lockdown or something like that. So for that reason, I think people are going to have more money in their hand. They've been saving up money. Savings rates are higher than they have been for years. So I do think there could be inflation in the United States in particular, and that could also affect the UK and other markets in Europe, albeit I think the UK is being slower to recover and some emerging markets are as well. So I think this time we could see slightly higher inflation expectations. I don't want to say where it's 3% or 4% or so on, but I think I've changed my mind a little bit on that. I've been taken aback by how quick the recovery has been. Before, people say, oh, not everyone's feeling it, and some people in the US are really poor, and the UK is doing worse than the US, and so are many other countries. That's very true. But I think as the year goes on, people are going to be quite surprised by how quickly many countries get back to their pre-pandemic peak. I think the wider questions are going to be how countries are going to pay off some of the debts, or at least make it sustainable. Are there going to be more taxes, as per my last video? Are there going to be a lot of blame games when it comes to how the economy is going? Because I do think inequality will go up high. That's going to be the wider issue, but I do think the economy will recover faster than people first expected. How can I help you? In two ways. First of all, are you an expat, a high net wealth individual, or just somebody who lives in a part of the world where it's difficult to get access to quality investment solutions? In which case, go onto my website on adamfayed.com and find out more. If you don't fit into any of those categories, then in which case there's a range of free material on my website, on this YouTube channel, and indeed on my Quora, where I get over 200 or have received over 231 million views in the last few years. And finally, if you want to actually read my thoughts in more detail, go onto Amazon and find my book on there.